morning, everybody. Welcome to the International Istanbul Security Forum for this morning. The topic itself is actually very timely for discussing the international security structure and Turkey's role as a stabilizing actor in the age of turmoil. That is today's title of the panel. First, I would like to call and invite our very, very respectful panelists for this morning. Dr. Valeria Giannotta, I hope I spelled rightly. Welcome.
Thank you.
Please. Associate Professor Şuay Nilhan Açıkalın, please. Şuay Hanım. Daryl, Swanepoel, if I said rightly, welcome. And İpek, Tekdemir, I think she will attend to online. That's what I was told. What we are actually discussing and why Turkey is called as stabilizing power in an age of turmoil, acting responsibly. For myself, actually, before I giving to our panelists for the floor, let me say just a few words. This is not a discussion, but just a few words before kicking off our discussion today. We know, looking today's international political structure, unfortunately, we don't see an orderly international politics. The actors that we depend on, at least in the last 7 decades, is not the real playing the role they are supposed to play. Just to say, pandemic perhaps will be most humanitarian and which was very in need of international cooperation. Unfortunately, we didn't see neither nation state nor international institution acting together collectively, but everybody is depending on its own resources. It is really a bad example of international cooperation, but also in a very severe conflicts in very neighborhood of Turkey in the south and north. Syria, almost 10 years passed, nobody intervening, even the great powers. On the north, Ukraine is also another tragedy in this age of turmoil. I don't want to go back to in the early 2000s, 9/11, and immediately after 9/11, the invasion of Iraq, in spite of international law, and today we discussed today, which also create a lot of conflicts even in the transatlantic community, the much community, international security-wise under the NATO umbrella, and Afghanistan. So wherever we go today, nowadays, unfortunately, the security structure and architecture of today's world seems to be in decline, in collapsing. For myself, I can explain under 4, just briefly, factors why, as we discuss as IR scholars in international relations today, why the liberal international order is in structure in decline. That's a hot debate in international community and among journalists and academia. One is the international political economic structure has been sometime in decline, which is we discuss under the theories of power transition theory, the trade, production, commerce, everything seems to be sweeping under the sole control of the West toward the rest, not the East, but also the diffusion of international economic factor. That's the real underlying factors. If you read Paul Cadi's the rise and decline of the great powers discussion, so it's a economy. Well, it seems stupid, yeah, but it is real economy. So Depending on this international political economic structure, what we call the newly emerging centers seems to be also apparent in international politics today. So they want to have a fair share in the world politics, from China to Turkey, Brazil, South Africa, new structure like BRICS and other institutions seem to be coming through, or as we just very recently seeing an unusual collaboration between Middle East, long-time American allies in the Middle East, Gulf countries, with their contacts and rapprochement with China and other great powers, which is sometimes something unusual. Third, I think the values, norms, and institution of international institutions, especially on liberal international institutions, seems to be also for some time in the last 2 decades in decline. In decline, even at the very heart of Europe, in cradle of the democracy, human rights of today's modern world. The rise of nationalism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, and instability, socio-economic crisis. Just look at France and others. You will see every day news media what's happening, and the rise. If you read the reports of Freedom House and others, the democracy and related values seems to be in decline, not in just the rest of the world, but also in the very heart of the Europe, even in the America, the invasion of even American Congress. I mean, symbolically, I think it says something to us. So it's really called the very hard values of liberalism in itself. The last one is, I think, intellectual, political-wise also, we lack the visionary leaders and visionary programs. I don't see in the last 20 years any real promising books or leadership at the level of, I don't know, I mean, for instance, can you say to me that any intellectual books that we have to read and follow and we will find a solution? Well, maybe more critical. Piketty's book of capitalism. Well, this is a new, only emerging of the neo-Marxist ideas of criticism of the inequality in the face of growing techno-capitalism, perhaps. But what is that? The Great Reset of Davos? Well, I think capitalists are in front of us in intellectual, they discuss, I mean, their future. So we have to do something. Shareholder capitalism, environmentalism, these are the new progressive agenda or gender-based understanding, but they are not a holistic understanding of society. So there is a lack of visionary intellectual leadership as well as political leadership. That's why the Kissinger, as a 100 years of old geopolitician, writing 2 books, World Order, and where he argued the real challenge of today's world is how to recreate, how to restore the world order, if any. If not, and chaos is coming. The last book that he published was Leadership. He understood if the structure is not there, I think in the crisis, in time of crisis, leaders must do something, but unfortunately we don't see it. Just to look at American leaders today, just the great intention of running again, who the most oldest in American history as running for the presidency. Biden is 80 years old, and Trump is close to him, excel. So the democratic world is also, I think, getting older. So with these thoughts in mind, but living in this earth together, how can we restore order and where we have to look at? So emerging power is Turkey, trying to rebuild itself in the region as a stabilizing, a responsible actor with all its foreign policy initiative and the base of humanitarian understanding that presented itself in time of pandemic, coronavirus, as well as responsibly acting internationally as a stabilizing power in the region. That is especially under the leadership of President Erdogan, some may criticize him, but I think in time of crisis, leadership is critical. That's what I answer. So today we have very distinguished panelists for this morning season. I will also go with the list that on our program. The first speaker will be Valeria Giannotta, coordinator of CeSPI Turkey Observation Center. She is director and coordinator of Turkey Observatory Center for Studies in International Politics. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, John. And I would like to thank all of you for being here in this early time in the morning.
So about 15 minutes
Okay.
will be okay, I think.
So before starting, I would like just to express my solidarity and condolences to the people of Turkey that has been badly affected by the twin earthquakes last February. And I would like to thank also the Directorate of Communication of the Turkish Republic, of the Presidency of the Turkish Republic, for organizing such a timely event. Actually, the reason why we are here is because there are many challenges, as you rightly pointed out before, that we are facing at individual level, regional level, international level. And those are all signs that the world has been changing, international system has been changing as well. And actually, the international system organization that we know resemble a distribution of power, which is not the current one, but it was the product of the Second World War. In meantime, the international system has changed, distribution of power has changed, and it seems that international organizations are not able to, or just failed to address in an efficient way the challenges and the crisis. So there is a sort of vacuum of power, also by the great powers, I would say. Mm-hmm. It's enough to look what happened in Afghanistan and the withdrawal of the US, the vacuum of power that has been left, and a sort of chaos that is coming out from the regional and international level, to understand that it's time to give the floor and to give voice in an adequate way to some emerging power. Actually, if we look at the international system, there are several examples that we are living in a challenging time and situation. There are wars, and this has effect on human beings, like displacement, migrations. We just coming out from a pandemic, and each of us, for the first time, individually, we had to change our daily life. And then there are some challenges and crises which are directly related to environment and natural disaster, and twin earthquakes hitting Turkey are the last and very sad examples, for example. And then there are some issues related to technology and logistics and nuclear power, energy, and so on and so forth. So I will say that in this new environment, it's not debatable the role of Turkey as emerging power and stabilizing power, as it was rightly pointed out, as the title of the panel says. Let me define what stabilizing means. Mm-hmm. To stabilize means the capacity to fix, to avoid a situation to become worse, to create the condition for a situation to continue in a regular and successful way. So, under this definition, we can see that Ankara's government is doing a lot. At least it is trying to do its best in order, on one side, to fulfill the vacuum, and in another side, to maintain a positive attitude and a positive approach in the region and internationally. This actually comes, according to me, at least, from the geographical location of Turkey. I mean, Turkey is geographically located in a very crucial area. So, on one side, it has to defend its own interest. I always say in Italy, for example, that nobody can be jealous of Turkey because from the neighborhood, there are many challenges, many threats, and many instability situations that can have a spillover effect into Turkey. Terrorism, for example, energy issue, wars, and so on and so forth. So, in one side, Turkey is trying to pursue its own interest. In the other side, it responds to the challenges coming from its critical geography. And on the other side as well, Turkey is very well embedded in the international structure. So it comes naturally that Ankara has to follow a sort of balancing policy and diplomatic actions, according to me. And it has been visible overall in the most recent crisis between Russia and Ukraine, when Ankara, thanks also to the personal connections of President Erdogan, that he has been constantly in touch rather with President Putin or Zelensky, has been trying to negotiating a lot, and we had the visible product outcome in Antalya before, and then in Istanbul, and then Ankara was actually the main stakeholder of the Grain Corridor, that it has been acknowledged worldwide, and also in Istanbul it has been established the UN headquarters. Yes. And nowadays they are still speaking about extending the deal. And this was a great success internationally because it avoided a food crisis in the world and overall in the southern part of the world. And then another sign of the constructive and cooperative approach of Turkey has been recorded according to the public diplomacy of this government. For example, the motto, the world is bigger than five. And also the main events that this Directorate of Communication has arranged all around the world by following the idea the international system and overall the UN security system needs to be reformed is of great importance. And Turkey has been just one of the spoken actors, because within the UN General Assembly, the majority of the states, they are just following the same motto, the same idea, and Turkey as Italy, coming from Italy, they belong to the same group that they really push for reforming the international security system that, as it is visible in front of our eyes, it failed to address the main challenges. It failed to find a solution also to the current war because Russia has the veto power. So as you said, there is a sort of clash between the West and the rest, but also I will say within the West as well. West, yes. So the needs of reforming, the needs to make a UN system according to the new distribution of power and to give voice maybe to new international organizations, to emerging international actors. And also, when we speak of public diplomacy of Turkey, which is like a great example, according to me, of soft power, thanks also to the agencies that Turkey has all around the world, TICA, for example, and some other like public diplomacy agency. Turkey has been one of the leading countries in giving aid during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I'm coming from Italy, and I'm always very emotional to say that Italy was one of the countries which was badly and firstly hit by the pandemic. And we felt like abandoned by the European Union because in that time we had scarcity. We did not have masks, we did not have medical equipment, but we always remembered the cargo, that medical aid that arrived directly from Ankara with a roomy sentence like behind any darkness, there is always a sunshine. And also it's something that proves not just the great friendship bilaterally between our countries, but the great heart of the Turkish people and Turkish government. And on the other side, I think Turkey has proved to be a very resilient country as well, and taking the opportunity of the geographical location of the country to emerge as a hub and reshaping the global supply chain. And emerging as in order to avoid further disruption of the global supply chain that time was pretty much oriented towards Asia, and also emerging as a global hub as well for logistics. Of course, when we speak about power, hard power has a great importance. And I think nowadays it's just starting from the assumption that Turkey has a very great army. It's the second biggest army within NATO. But nowadays it's in front of our eyes the development of the defense industry in Turkey. So the frigate, the drones, unmanned drones, and so on and so forth. So I will say that by merging this soft power, which is very efficient, and hard power, Turkey is emerging as a sort of smart power, I would say. So able to act, or at least to present itself as a hub for peace, regionally and also internationally. And then, when we speak about region, I mean, we shouldn't neglect the great effort of normalizing the relation with some historical competitors in the region. So nowadays, since a couple of years, after more tense relations in the region, Turkey started to normalize with all competitors, starting from the Gulf countries, Israel, but also I will say that the cherry on the cake is the normalization going on with Armenia, which has been always a very problematic. And also, nowadays, Turkey is trying to act as an energy hub as well and developing its nuclear power, as it was showed recently. I would say that in this regard, Ankara is acting as a stabilizer, I would say, in a very highly and unpredictable environment as well. And this is going to be a benefit also for the international community. And all the international community will have a sort of peace dividend, a positive dividend of this. But of course, on the other side, we need the international community to put aside, according to me, a sort of negative approach and to develop a sort of better understanding of Turkish stance in the region. For example, according to Cyprus issue, which is one of the most critical issues and historical one. I think it's the longest war, not frozen war that we have been witnessing in the international system as well. And having a sort of genuine approach towards Turkey, also related to sheltering terrorists, as in Sweden, the Swedish case and the accession of Sweden and Finland to NATO has proved. Because at the end of the day, by including also Turkey in the future, in the new defense architecture of European Union, or in a new design of the international system, according to new organization, it will be a win-win situation. I do believe that overall, Turkey has the capability and the competence and also the credibility to be a stabilizing partner and to be a good partner. And this credibility has been proved also by the so-called refugees deal that it was signed between Ankara and Brussels back in 2016. That despite any criticism and despite the deficit, I would say, by the European Union, by the way, Turkey has kept the promises even without the positive financial support by the European Union, but has kept the promises to locate more than 4 million of Syrians that are still here in Turkey. So I think I will stop here and I will give the floor to the other distinguished guests. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. Actually, she summarized perfectly the dimensions of Turkey playing as a stabilizing factor. What are the factors that under the disposal of Turkish capacity that play positively for the international community in its region? I think Italy is one of the good neighbors in this sense, understand each other in many sense, because they are actually suffering the same maybe problems or facing the same challenges in the region, in the Mediterranean. That's why Turkish-Italian relations seems to be emerging in the recent years, but I think the new governments also understand well each other in many issues together. Thank you for this very good presentation. The second speaker for today's panel is Associate Professor Şuay Nilhan Açıkalın from Ankara Hacı Bayram Veli University. She is currently a faculty member in the Department of International Relations and also Vice Director of Institute of Graduate Program. She wrote a PhD dissertation. I think she will touch upon today the political leadership and foreign policy politics, Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Angela Merkel. So she is best know about how to speak about the role of leadership. The floor is yours, Ms. Açıkalın.
Thank you, Professor Akgün. It's sometimes hard to talk when you have a very famous moderator like we have in this panel. Because he drove a very clear and broad framework for the speakers, and thanks for my friend Valeria. She touched upon the most of the part of the Turkish foreign policy in last 20 years, but of course, today I will also touch upon how Turkey became a stabilizing power in last 2 decades. But first of all, I would like to start with how we characterize the new international system, which is definitely more chaotic and full of the complexities that try to reshape, reform, not in a year, but in a day right now, especially under the Russian-Ukrainian war and its effects. So not only the Turkey, but most of the countries in the international system right now trying to navigating the chaotic system while they are pursuing their interest, but while they are also contributing the structure of the international system. And in last decade, especially the AK Party area, Turkey has been emerged as a stabilizing power both in its region and also it's in the global level. And today I would like to touch upon this stabilizing power in 3 dimensions. First one is the soft power, hard power, and the last one, which is directly related my PhD thesis with the leader diplomacy and how our President Recep Tayyip Erdogan leadership personality plays the role, the formation of the Turkish foreign policy. First of all, the soft power side of the Turkey's foreign policy in this respect is actually mostly long-term contribution of the restructuring of international system. Turkey is an active support of the restructuring of international system, which is unique in the Turkish history because generally in last 50-60 years, Turkey followed a very status quo, very westernized foreign policy. But in last 2 decades, Turkey contributed not only in a hard power way, but soft power way to focus on the more fairer world with the world is bigger than 5 and looking for a reformation in United Nations Security Council. But also with these perspective, Turkey's humanitarian foreign policy was also shaped from this idea because Turkey and our President Recep Tayyip Erdogan believes that elimination of inequalities in the different geographies will also create a more peaceful environment in international system. And because of this, not only to Turkey but also other actors in the system should be responsible for the global issues, and that the global issues should be addressed with only the global cooperation, while the concept of no one left behind with the covering all geographies, including the other side of the world. If you look from the Turkey map, the other dimension of the Turkey's soft power in this way, of course, the Turkey has been playing a role of facilitator and the mediator role in the regional and also global issues. And Valeria already touched upon the Turkey's achievement and the successful mediator and the facilitator role in the Russian-Ukrainian war, especially in the grain deal agreement, which basically prevent a kind of not only for humanitarian agreement, but this agreement on most of the Turkish and the international media outlets, I underlined the importance of this agreement. This agreement is not only the grain deal agreement. This agreement has both humanitarian dimension. This agreement has a security dimension. And most important, in the middle term and the long term, this agreement, the grain deal agreement, managed to prevent a kind of possible conflicts and the famine in the especially in African continent, and which led to or to create the possible conflicts in the African continent, which had already been under the shadow of many internal conflicts over there. So if you look over these policies seems to be sometimes long-term, especially the world is bigger than 5 approach of Turkey, but he used this motto firstly in 2014, in the United Nations Leaders Summit. Since then, I was there last week. I was there in the last United Nations General Assembly with the President last year, and I saw that in the last decade, thanks to Turkey's effort and his personal leadership on the world is bigger than 5. Even the American President Biden says, yes, United Nations needs some reformation. Maybe it's not, seems to be a very concrete, very easy result that we have before, but it's an amazing and the successful achievement of the Turkey's contribution to restructuring of the international system, and how this international system can be made more human-based, more fairer, which covers the all parts of the world, including the disadvantaged groups and eliminating the inequalities. In the second dimension of the Turkey's stabilizing power, there is no doubt Turkey's hard power, which is very important while especially in 2 ways. First one is the fighting against the terrorism. Turkey is one of the most experienced countries when it comes to the unfortunately fighting against terrorism, but the last 5 years we changed the paradigm in the fighting against the terrorism while addressing the prevent the terrorism in its epicenter, and we made cross-border operations since the Syrian crisis, and right now in 2023 Turkey is quite successful eliminating the terrorist organization PKK, VPIG, PID, and even the ISIS that our president declared a few days ago. Turkish operation, intelligence operation, managed to eliminate the leader of the ISIS. So the point is that the Turkey's fighting against the terrorism, there is no doubt, developed both in diplomatic way, but of course it was supported by the Turkey's national defense sector. In the Turkey's national defense sector, it's this time actually for both participants of this forum and who comes to Turkey in this during the election process. I believe that should be exciting because in last 2 weeks our president announced a new defense sector developments of Turkey, and since just only the 1 week we saw the new drone ships of TCG Anadolu of Turkey. If you have a time in Istanbul, when you have a time, you will visit the TCG Anadolu from the Zeytinburnu coast of Istanbul, which is the first multi-purpose of drone carrier ship, was given to the Turkish Navy, and we also just declared our national aircraft Khan yesterday or 2 days ago. So even you see that I forget how many developments we see just in a 1 week. So I suggest to you, for especially to my foreigner friends, yes, it's a little bit busy time in Turkey because of election, but it's also exciting time to see how the Turkish national defense sector has been developed, and there is a concrete results even we see in a 1 week. So all these changing and developing in the hard power capacity of Turkey gives the huge deterrence capacity while the preventing conflicts as a stabilizing power of Turkey in general sense, but more importantly it shows that Turkey is not only contributing to international system in a restructuring way, but also Turkey has a more better capacity to give a reflex to emerging issues in the field. Last dimension, which is the leader diplomacy, or most of you maybe see before the literature, it's called the personal diplomacy. It is a quite new notion that used in international relations. All I can say that the Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his leadership personally plays a very vital and key role while building Turkey as a stabilizing power, because he is personally create and establish a very sensitive, a very deep relations with the other world leaders based on trust and also friendship, and the most interesting part with the entrepreneurial way, because Our President Erdogan basically right now personally can play a mediator and the facilitator role in any conflict, both in the region and across the regional borders. But I can say that he's not only playing a classical or the traditional facilitator or the mediator role, but he also shows the entrepreneurial leadership abilities. What I mean is that he managed to bring innovative ideas to solve the regional issues and also global issues based on his ideology that we saw in the world is bigger than five, because his personal political life, if you look over his personal political life, these are not the coincidence. I mean, his all 50 years in politics in Turkey, he generally focused on how we can establish more fairer society and more fairer world. So these all perspective is directly reflected to his understanding of the foreign policy making. And in this respect, we can say that we saw his direct personal role in the solving of the problems in the Balkan region in last 2 years. He directly calls the leaders of these countries. And it's also, of course, it is advantage to be experienced leader, because right now probably he is the most longest served leader together with the President Putin, if you count Russia in the region of Europe. Most of the leaders, he has a very good communication, dialogue, and the friendship. And right now he seems to be, or he was perceived as a problem solver almost in all regions, although we have sometimes problems with other countries. So if I want to summarize my speech, I can say that right now Turkey is a stabilizing power. We can say that Turkey is the master of navigating these chaotic days, because Turkey, thanks to it is the deep historical tradition of diplomacy and the understanding of governance, Turkey is contributing to restructuring more fairer world, while Turkey gives emerging reflexes and answers addressing the regional and the global issues. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Açıkalın, for your excellent contribution for this morning discussion today, especially Turkey's entrepreneurial aspects as well. I mean, I remember last year, this is also another public diplomacy forum, ADF, Antalya Diplomacy Forum. I think it's a new brand of Turkey, bringing all together of the intellectuals, academics, practitioners, or politicians in Antalya, well established now in the international community. So this is a part of the public diplomacy as well. But the title was also Innovative and Creative Diplomacy last year, not only having the power or capacity or capability, but also to address and discuss and share with the rest of the world and openly. I mean, one aspect of President Erdogan in this case is he really not considering his intention and what is he doing, what he say, what he want to do. So the international public opinion, yes, sometimes react, but understand. I mean, Turkey is a very predictable power. Nobody can say that Turkey is making a surprise. No, Turkey is a growing nation state which is very keen on its national interest, but also acting and intending to act together with international community in the multilateral form, which is why Turkey is not destabilizing or disrupting international institutions. Turkey is acting within as a reformist. I think this is also important, even in the case of UN reforms or in the NATO to address issues in critical times, or in another international institution, including OIC, for instance, which I think has been very ignored in the last 20 years when Turkey, one of the leading political figures representing the General Secretary of OIC, it was the most important reforms in the restructure of the OIC as well. So same thing applies to all the international institutions, and with good intention, open and transparent way addressing. So I think this must be also addressed. The next speaker now is Daryl Swanepoel, CEO of Inclusive Society Institute. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Inclusive Society Institute, which is an independent South African non-profit public policy research institute. He is also a former member of parliament at South Africa. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is this on? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss Turkey's growing engagement with Africa over the past 2 decades. As a rising global power, Turkey aims to contribute to the region's peace, security, and economic development while offering an alternative to traditional powers with colonial ties. This evolving relationship can transform Africa's geopolitical landscape and potentially foster a more balanced approach to regional development. However, it is essential to critically assess Ankara's engagement and its impact on Africa's peace and security landscape. This presentation evaluates Turkey's role in Africa, focusing on critical areas such as summit diplomacy, foreign diplomacy diversification, education and military engagement, and trade and investment. Africa has enormous global economic and political potential, but faces rapid urbanization, poverty, and socio-economic divisions. Partnerships with external powers can catalyze development and resilience building. However, the increased attention also risks Africa being perceived merely as a theater for global power competition, where it is utilized as a proxy in global geopolitical rivalries. In this context, Turkey's potential as a moderating power becomes increasingly essential, contributing to a more balanced and collaborative environment while respecting African agency. To understand Turkey's current involvement in Africa, we must examine historical engagement shaping its ties with the continent. Turkey's historical engagement can be divided into 3 periods: the Ottoman state connections, the reduced relations between 1923 and 1998, and the revival of interest in Africa starting in the late 1990s. This newest shift represents the focus of our analysis. The collapse of the Soviet Union and domestic factors led to more proactive and assertive Turkish foreign policy aimed at increasing Turkey's influence beyond its immediate neighborhood. The significant impact of Turkish leaders on shaping Turkey's foreign policy towards Africa highlights the importance of cultural and historical connections with former Ottoman territories. Turkey has been developing its approach to South-South cooperation, focusing on increasing visibility and engagement in African development projects. It has been mentioned, but the Turkish Cooperation Coordination Agency plays a crucial role in executing this strategy, with countries such as Somalia and Sudan receiving significant contributions. Turkey's development assistance prioritizes education, administrative and civil infrastructure, health, water, and sanitation, facilitating government projects and directly engaging with Turkish NGOs. In 2019, Turkey allocated $8.6 billion to official development assistance. This is not a small amount of money, with a large portion of it targeting humanitarian and food aid. Turkey's educational diplomacy in Africa is vital to its foreign policy. Education fosters long-term cultural exchange and strengthens social, political, and economic ties. Turkey's education diplomacy includes scholarships, exchange programs, the establishing of Turkish schools and universities, which enhance its soft power and addresses language barriers, cultural differences, and resource limitations. The Gulen movement once significantly influenced Turkey's educational diplomacy in Africa. Still, following the deterioration of the relationship with President Erdogan's AKP party and the failed coup attempt in 2016, Turkey took measures to shut down the Gulen-affiliated institutions. Subsequently, and thankfully, Turkey established the Turkish Maarif Foundation, which now operates nearly 150 schools and 20 dormitories across 25, I was corrected this morning, 26 African countries. Through its initiatives, the Turkish Maarif Foundation promotes Turkish education abroad, further solidifying Turkey's commitment to strengthening its ties with African nations through educational diplomacy. To understand Turkey's role as an alternative partner in Africa, we must also examine its military engagements, which include high-level diplomatic visits, military training schemes, collaborative exercises, and involvement in peacekeeping operations. Many African states are eager to benefit from Turkey's experience in counterinsurgency, especially against terrorism, security sector modernization, and defense industry advancements. Turkey's arms exports to African nations has increased, providing competitively priced military equipment with minimal restrictions. Turkish drone technologies such as the Bayraktar TB2 has become increasingly relevant in the African security landscape. However, Turkey's no-strings-attached approach raises concerns about potential arms proliferation and its impact on regional conflicts. Turkey's engagement in Somalia exemplifies its blend of humanitarian concerns and long-term strategic interests. Ankara's involvement began as a humanitarian response to the 2011 drought and has evolved into a comprehensive policy encompassing political and social dimensions. Turkey has supported Somalia's humanitarian and reconstruction efforts, investing in infrastructure projects and education. Additionally, Turkey has contributed to peacekeeping and mediation efforts and established a military base in the country. Despite these efforts, Turkey's humanitarian diplomacy in Somalia faces challenges, including on-the-ground realities, competing interests of other nations, capacity constraints, and the need for regional recognition and international collaboration. Turkey's engagement in Somalia demonstrates its aspiration to establish a prominent role in regional and global politics. Despite challenges and limitations, Turkey's comprehensive policy in Somalia showcases its commitment to fostering long-term relationships and supporting development and peacekeeping efforts within the African continent. Turkey's expanding trade and investment in Africa reflects its diversification strategy and growing reliance on the continent to develop export markets and to sustain economic growth. Focusing on agriculture, construction, and textiles, Turkey has forged strong trading relationships with countries like Egypt, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and my home country, South Africa. By 2022, Africa became Turkey's third largest trade source, surpassed only by Europe and Asia. Turkey has signed trade and economic cooperation agreements with 38 African nations, establishing a solid foundation for mutual economic relations. Turkish investments in Africa have increased tenfold since 2004, reflecting a broader strategy to extend economic influence and promote sustainable development. Turkey's engagement with Africa presents opportunities and challenges for both parties. Turkey seeks to diversify its economic and political interests, while African nations can diversify their economic base and access to new technologies and investments. Despite Turkey's impressive growth in engagement with African countries, there is more that needs to be done. To address the challenges that remain in balancing interests, navigating geopolitical rivalries, and adapting Turkey's foreign policy to the demands of African engagements, here are 5 recommendations to enhance Turkish-African relations. Firstly, to enhance transparency in military agreements. Turkey and African countries should collaborate to improve transparency and accountability, ensuring compliance with international norms and human rights standards. In this process, involving AU organs, particularly the Peace and Security Council, can bolster these efforts. By incorporating third-party monitoring mechanisms and engaging regional organizations, the potential negative implications of arms proliferation and increased militarization can be mitigated, further strengthening the cooperative relations between Turkey and African nations. Secondly, to increase long-term programmatic funding. Turkey should consider expanding its long-term programmatic financing for African nations, transitioning from a predominantly project-based approach to a more structured, strategic investment in development programs. This will give African countries greater predictability and resources to address complex, systematic educational, healthcare, and infrastructural challenges. Thirdly, better commitment to development and social responsibility within trade and investment. Turkey and African nations should emphasize sustainable development, human rights, and social accountability as central pillars on their trade and investment activities. By jointly focusing on environmental conservation, social inclusion, gender equality, and ethical business practices, both parties can create a solid foundation for expanding and deepening their trade and investment relationships. Fourthly, foster regional integration and cooperation. Turkey should consider supporting regional integration efforts in Africa, working closely with organizations such as the African Union and regional economic communities to promote economic growth, inter-regional trade, and political stability. The country should consider the potential of the African Continental Free Trade Area as a key avenue for trade and investment in Africa. This could include technical assistance, capacity building programs, and investment in regional infrastructure projects. And here I just want to digress and just to refer to the importance of working with African countries through structures as the African Union and regional economic communities, because there's a growing view amongst the African leadership that Africa no longer wants to have leaders taking decisions for them. They want decisions taken with and by them. So it's important to engage these communities and not impose views such as the colonial past from which the continent is emerging. And lastly, to bolster political dialogue and cooperation, African nations should actively work to establish clearer objectives for their engagement with Turkey. Alongside Turkey, they ought to continue investing in high-level diplomatic interactions, including Turkey-Africa summits, state visits, and institutional structures to nurture mutual understanding and tackle common challenges. Such collaboration can involve addressing global issues like climate change, pandemics, and peace and security, and promoting democratic governance, transparency, and the adherence to the rule of law. By implementing these recommendations, Turkey and African nations can create a positive, constructive partnership that encourages long-term growth and development, fostering a more prosperous and interconnected future for both parties involved. I think, in closing, that Turkey is uniquely placed to provide a moderating bridge between the competing superpowers on the African continent, an honest broker, so to speak, a third way. Thank you.
Thank you for recover. I mean, addressing all bilateral understanding between Turkey and Africa, which is a new dimension in Africa. It was 2010. It was, I think, with my colleagues, we wrote a first article published on Turkey's opening to Africa. And since that time, developments are huge to deepen and multidimensionalize Turkey's relation with Africa. The unique aspect, I think, especially the perception of the African nation, is Turkey is not imposing anything. Turkey is sharing its experience and following a policy of win-win. That's the formula that most used by our President Erdogan in his visit. I have accompanied our presidential visit maybe 10 or 12 times in different settings, and Erdogan is one of the, I think, leader in this case, visiting more than half of the countries, as far as I know, 38 countries now reach every year. Erdogan visiting in different countries in Africa. So there is a growing interest. Let's say that the whole value of the trade and others may not be showing it, but political impact and prospect is much bigger than today, and it is a promising cooperation with all challenges and aspects. As myself, as a chairman of the Turkish Maarif Foundation in the last 6 years, I visit many of the African countries as well, and we have schools, as Daryl mentioned, running schools in 26 different African countries. 19 of them are least developed countries. So it's not just we are gaining or doing some business, but also it's a humanitarian aspects. Though looking from the West, I have been discussing Turkish-Africa relation with a good friend of mine in Paris last year in think tanks. We discussed a lot of things, but the first question asked, what are you doing in Africa? I said, no, we are opening schools and teaching some 100 kids Turkish language every year, nothing more. And well, compared to African, France, all domination in Africa in more than 18 countries, Franco-Africa, it's nothing. I mean, you just taught them the French language, everybody making it an official language, said, no, you are doing something more. You are changing their minds. Well, that's true. That's true. Setting good examples, not imposing, but this is, I think, needed by both sides. We need partners. Yes, Europe is still the #1 partner for Turkey, but for development, we need more partnership in different parts of the world, and Africa is really one of the emerging one of them. It is a promising one. Thank you very much for covering all this together. Our last speaker now, not among us in this salon today, but she will be speaking online, right?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, welcome İpek Hanım, İpek Tekdemir. She is a political analyst and strategic communication advisor. She works at the European Parliament, and her research actually revolves around communication, EU politics, diplomacy, Eurasia affairs, as well as culture and education. The mic is yours, Ms. İpek Tekdemir, please.
Çok teşekkür ederim değerli hocam. Çok sağ olun. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, dear friends, colleagues. I would like to send my greetings from Brussels, from the European Parliament. Unfortunately, due to the hectic schedule, I cannot be with you in person today. I would have loved to be, in fact, to be with you in my beloved city in Istanbul with esteemed friends and colleagues. I also would like to thank you very much for all your messages I have received recently from my friends who are attending to this very important conference. And I hope maybe next year I will be happy to join in physical in Istanbul. I also would like to extend my thanks to the Presidency, Directorate of Communications of Republic of Turkey is hosting the Istanbul Security Forum. I believe this forum is very timely, and I would like to extend another congratulations to the team and their great work. I am here actually speaking in my personal capacity, and I would like to highlight this. What I say is not necessarily the official position of my institution. So it's always difficult to speak as a last speaker, and especially in our panel, I have seen prestigious speakers, and one of them, Valeria, is a very good friend of mine, and she's a top expert, and I'm very happy that we are in the same panel together with her, and she very well explained, and with the other panelists as well. Today, I would like to discuss how Turkey's role in ensuring regional and global security, as well as the importance of international cooperation in addressing the complex challenges we face today. So we see the changing nature of security. As the world changes, so does our understanding of security as well. It is no longer limited to traditional military threats, what we see, but also we see today non-traditional security challenges such such as climate change, economic crisis, cyber threats, and pandemics. As we all experience, the recent COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the importance of international cooperation and the need for coordinated responses to global crises. Turkey obviously plays a crucial role in ensuring regional and global security. As an active member of international organizations such as the UN and the NATO, we acknowledge that Turkey advocates for an international system based on inclusive and equal representation. Turkey shares the idea that, very well said by Valeria, the United Nations Security Council, as with the must be reformed with the mission of the world is bigger than five on various platforms. And this was emphasizing the need to overcome the current imbalanced international system. So Turkey obviously is a key player in the region. I often also have an exchange with my colleagues here. And Turkey has a rich history and culture that spans both Europe and Asia. And its strategic location between the Middle East, Europe, and the Caucasus, a little further Central Asia, makes it a crucial partner for promoting stability and security in the region. As we know, Turkey's effort to resolve regional conflicts, such as its mediation efforts in Syria and Libya, demonstrate its commitment to promoting stability and peace. Turkey's role in NATO and its candidacy for EU membership are further evidence of its commitment to cooperation and collaboration. Let's not forget that Turkey is also an important partner in the fight against terrorism and has played a significant role in addressing the refugee crisis. What we have seen also recently, Turkey has had an instrumental role, especially not only working with the Western allies against Russia within the United Nations General Assembly, but also provided arms, including Bayraktars and other assistance to Ukraine, as well as has condemned Russian aggression. So Turkey's role has been further underlined with its diplomatic success when reaching the agreement between Russia and Ukraine on the Black Sea Grain Deal initiative. So we see these efforts continue in order to prolong the deal even further, as Russia is constantly threatening to suspend its participation from the agreement. And I believe, and I often remind my colleagues, interlocutors here within the European Union, without Turkey, this would not be possible. Furthermore, Turkey has been providing humanitarian aid to millions of people affected by the Syrian conflict and has been hosting millions of Syrian, not only Syrian, but also other refugees in its territory for almost a decade. Turkey showed itself as a stabilizing power that promotes international cooperation as a means to resolve vital and urgent issues, new challenges, and international conflicts. I would like to conclude here. Turkey's strategic location, history, and commitment to international cooperation make it a key player in promoting stability and security in the region and beyond. As we face increasingly complex challenges today, it is essential that we work together and to find solutions that benefit us all. Çok teşekkür ederim. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, İpek, Tekdemir, for your very concise but very deeply addressing the especially Turkey European aspects and how we read from the West to Turkey's role in the region, from geopolitics to culture and the refugee issues in today's international security complex. Now we will return to Floor actually to open some discussion. I think we have at least maybe 15 minutes left to have some questions from our audience. If you want to ask a question to any speaker today, please raise your hand and ask directly. Is there? Everything is well understood that? If you don't have questions, since we have time, I want to take my opportunity, maybe address some questions to speakers. Maybe before we leave the floor from the last speaker, I mean, how Ms. Tekdemir, İpek Hanım, how Europe in general, or is there any differences with regard to Turkey's following policy toward Russian invasion of Ukraine? I mean, do they see the same from the same point of view, or is there a difference within Europe from different stands, from Paris to Berlin to maybe London? How do they perceive? Is there any difference to understand Turkey's position today vis-a-vis Ukraine issue?
Well, dear Professor, you mean that how Turkey is balancing in this conflict, in this war, from the European perspective?
Yeah.
Obviously, that it is hard to explain. It is hard to understand how Turkey is trying its best and balancing between Ukraine and Russia. On the other hand, I believe that this is a very good example to show and providing arms. And Turkey was one of the first countries provided arms to Ukraine, and before the all European alliance gather and try to help the Ukraine. So on the other hand, Turkey also followed a foreign policy on Russia by not creating conflict or just taking a side and balanced policy, and follow the balanced policy. And this is hard, as I said, from European perspective. It is hard to explain to Europeans. But as I said, Turkey's strategic location, history, and commitment to international cooperation, and Turkey has to follow such a balanced foreign policy. And some, of course, European countries are appreciating. On the other hand, Turkey is receiving heavily criticism on this, especially with the recent nuclear power plant inauguration, and together with the Vladimir Putin. And so it was quite heavily criticized, but I am, as I said, I'm coming from Turkey and I understand, and we have to keep our balance, and I'm calling now I'm not speaking on behalf of the European Parliament, and I do my best to explain to the interlocutors and experts and also policymakers of the Turkey situation right now.
Thank you, İpek Hanım, for your explanation. Thank you very much. Let me just myself briefly respond from my side as academic scholar here as a moderator. Yes, in the last upcoming short to mid-term, our first priority will be stabilizing our region, and Ukraine and Syria will be certainly priority, because there are the conflict regions, and we will spend some time to renormalize with Syria, and this Erdogan already explained intention to come together with Assad himself. So it is pending, and maybe before or after election he will come. I will not discuss the elections. It is a Turkey's democratic play at home. But with regard to Russia coming to Georgia or something, I think in the upcoming years, for 2 years at least, up till new president will be elected in 25, November 24, and then replace the new one and the already ex one. Maybe he will be elected, I'm not sure, in 25. The Ukraine issue will not be resolved. That's my reading. Given all the involvement and actors' intentions, I will not see any easy solution for Ukraine. As long as Ukraine issue is over there, Russia will be fully engaged with Ukraine enough, with Belarus. He will not be interested in Georgia, even though he might be not happy with the Georgian policies as well, but as well Syria. So they are all complex, interdependent, and interconnected issues. So with this context, Turkey will be a key role. We will be in Ankara ruling Turkey. Certainly, the first priority will be regional, how to create again peace and order in the region first. Foremost, it is very much a real vital interest of Turkey as a nation state. That is how I read it. With regard to election results, yes, there are two opposite sides, but whoever comes to power in Ankara, he will face the same realities from Karabakh to Libya to Syria. This is a security issue at home. It is not that you define yourself in the regional strategic environment, but you have to react and you have to involve, you have to maybe act responsibly. So I don't think that Turkey's role as it's came in the last 20 years will be totally radically changed, because the society already bought this, accepted this, Turkey's new strategic role in international politics, and only through this way we can keep our political integrity and independence and economic prospects in the region, because we have tested European American policies. When it was the Syrian refugee case, no help. In the pandemic, no. In other critical terrorist issue at home. So it is a national interest. I think it's beyond the personal politics, but certainly Erdogan will set the language in terms of engagement. The tones will be nuanced. That's I understand, and it's very normal. But it's a Turkish national interest, and Turkey will certainly try to renormalize its already existing relation with its neighbors and continue dialogue with West, so certainly, and also with Russia. And I think everybody will understand that Turkey is not old Turkey. Turkey is new, and I think we have to, like or not, appreciate and accept this way. This is why we are talking about the new Turkey. Thank you very much, each and all of our panelists, for your real valuable contribution today. Ms. Valeria, Ms. Açıkalın, Daryl, and İpek Tekdemir from Brussels. Thank you very much, and give applause.